Hola, hola. Welcome to the Money Chisme podcast. Today we are getting into my favorite type of chisme, real estate investing. And I do have with me another fellow real estate investor, Gabriela Ariza. She's here to share her real estate investing journey, plus some tips for new investors. Hola, Gabriela. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited because I always like to hear other people that are in our community investing in real estate because usually you see not our community too much when you see like real estate investors. So I really am happy that you're here to share your journey and you have some really good tips. I'm excited to get into it. So, to get into it, I want to start off from the beginning with your first rental property. What was your first rental?
Actually, my first rental was a house hack. I didn't really know what I was doing, and I didn't realize that I was getting into investing in rental properties to begin with. I pretty much got out of college and I was like, so what do we do next? Oh, okay, let's just buy a house. So I
Yeah.
ended up buying a house and decided to just rent out the rooms
Mhm.
and started renting out like the basement and I rented out the garage. And I was like, wow, okay, I'm able to pay my mortgage and still have a little bit left over by just
Mhm.
doing this. So that's where it all started.
Nice. I feel like I was the same way where that was kind of like the next step, really. Same thing. It's like, okay, I'm going to college. All right, I'm done with doing college or done with college. What's next? And it's like, okay, I'm gonna buy a house because that's the dream, right? And I kind of ended up doing the same where I rented out one room for a friend that needed a place to stay, and I ended up making some income off of that. And same thing, like I didn't know I was real estate investing. So a lot of people start off that way. And you mentioned house hacking, which is basically just finding a way to make income from a property that you're living in. And you found some really cool ways that I didn't even think of at that time to make income, and I want to get a little bit into that. Yeah, you rented out some of the rooms, but you also did some other things with that property. Can you talk about a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I decided to rent out the garage, and that was thanks to a friend who gave me an idea. He literally just bought like a lot and then he put a
Mhm,
bunch of gravel and he just started renting out all the spots because they were close to the train station. So when
mhm,
I was house shopping, I was trying to find a house that was close to a train station. So that way I could be like, okay, I'm going to rent an extra spot in the garage because I only had one car and there was a
mhm.
bunch of street parking. So, immediately once I got the house, I started renting out the garage, and that was probably the best thing ever because the person who needed it was just using it for a classic car, and it was just
Mm.
stored in there, and pretty much the whole time I had that house, he was just renting.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. When you got your property, that was your first initial thought was like, oh, rent out the garage. You had the mentality of buying somewhere close to the train station.
Yeah, and then the other thing was also renting out the basement. I was
Mhm,
trying to look for a house that was split in 2, where the basement had privacy, but it still had windows and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, I could rent this out, especially for somebody who is local to the area or needs access to get to downtown. I was thinking about all the layouts in mind on how can we have privacy, but at the same time do house hacking without having to buy like a duplex or triplex.
yeah. And so when you bought your first house, was this like your idea of like, okay, I'm gonna live with in it for a few years, or did you think that you were gonna stay there for a long time, or what was your mentality?
I thought I was gonna stay there for a really long time
Mhm,
because also the location where I was looking at was very close to my job. And so I could drive, it was like a 5 or 6 minute commute. And I was like, I'm gonna keep this house forever because
mhm.
it just made sense. And then literally 2 months after I got the house, I got laid off. And
Oof.
I'm so grateful that I was house hacking because that mortgage payment didn't weigh so much on me because it's like all this is coming in and it's helping
Mhm.
me for housing. So it was really, I guess, a blessing in disguise, you could say.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things that I like about real estate investing because, like, you have something else to cover down for unexpected, like, you got laid off, but your mortgage was pretty much, if not all paid at that point, so you're like, "Okay, who cares? I got laid off, I'll find another job," and not have to stress about it too much. So, one of the big questions that I always get is, do you buy your first property? And this is a great way, is by living in it first and finding ways to like house hack it. But how did you get your first home? Like, what kind of loan or what was the process like for you?
I did a conventional, I think it was like a 5% down. And so with that, you only have to be in the property for a year, have it as a primary, and then you can move out and then do the same thing. So that's what I did. I stayed in that house maybe a couple or about 3 years or so. And
Mhm.
then I did the same thing, got a conventional, and then went to the next property.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to get started. And that's pretty much like how I used the VA home loan to get my first house, which lucky for that is like 0% down and stuff. So that was good for
Pretty good.
me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was good for me. And yours is good because people think that you need like the 20% down up front when they're going out to buy like their first home or whatever. But there's loans and stuff out there that you could do 5%. I think FHA is like 3.5% or something like that. You just gotta find something that works for you, and you found something that worked for you, and it was 5%. 5% is really good to off the
Yeah.
bat. Yeah. With that, you said you lived in it for about 3 years. What made you decide to move, and were you thinking of another rental, or were you again thinking of, "Okay, Imma buy my next place where I'm gonna stay at for a while?"
So what happened was I started remodeling the basement
Mhm,
more probably in year 2, and so I
mhm,
decided to move to the downstairs, and it really felt like 2 separate units. So the people who were upstairs, they wanted the whole entire house because they ended up having a larger family and the
mhm,
kids were becoming teenagers and stuff, so they wanted their own space. So I didn't think about it, but I was like, okay, I'm
mm,
ready to move on and rent out this whole entire house and go to the next project. And during that time, it was COVID time. So a lot of people were moving out of the city and they were going into the suburbs. And so there was a lot of opportunity where a lot of people were selling and things were sitting on the market in the
mhm.
city. So I was like, okay, let me go ahead and go in while everybody's leaving. So
Yeah.
I ended up finding a condo, and it ended up being an estate sale, and it had
Mhm.
just been sitting for, like, 100 something days,
Ooh.
and it was a good opportunity because it just looked really disgusting, it was really stinky, it was just so outdated, and I was like, "This is perfect," because the location is what I was looking for, and it was in a good building, so I'm like, "Okay, let's go for this one." So I wanted to
Yeah.
try a condo just to get a different experience besides, like, a single
Mhm.
family home, so that's why I went in that route.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another good point that a lot of people at the beginning that they're trying to get into real estate investing, they are thinking of pretty much turnkey properties. Like you don't really have to do much and everything. And so, yeah, those are going to be more expensive and a higher down payment or whatever, unless you get like a conventional loan that gives you 5% or something like that. But those are usually like higher priced. So I guess that's a good advice right there is like when you're first getting started, like you have to look beyond. You saw potential, like everybody else was turned off by it, like, "Ew, stinks. Ew, it looks ugly." But you saw the potential and you went for it. And so how did that go with, I guess you pretty much had to do like a rehab. How was that?
So that was really challenging because I needed to be out of my original place. And so I was in limbo, like trying to close on this other
Mhm.
property. And once we closed, I was like, okay, this is my new place. Where am I going to stay while also remodeling? So
Yeah,
I literally was in a sleeping bag in the kitchen while the remodel was happening in the rest of the space.
yeah,
And but it was just so worth it because at the end, like, the change, it looked like a completely different unit,
yeah.
and I was going in with the intention of either flipping it or
Mhm,
doing more of a rental, and so it
mhm.
just depended on the market. So when the market shifted, that's when I determined which exit strategy I wanted to take.
Yeah. And what would you say was your biggest, I guess, obstacle or lesson learned there? Because sometimes some people just get into flipping or scared to get into flipping because they're like, oh my God, what if like I can't, fix it in time or whatever? What was yours?
I think some learning lessons. I think it really helped that I started off with a condo as my first
Hmm.
flip because you're not dealing with so many mechanicals and so many of the major ticket items like
Hmm.
foundation or a roof. So I was like, let me start with this because I'm still trying to get familiar with everything. So it was more of a cosmetics flip. And I think that
Yeah.
really helped. So with that, I really learned like how to deal with contractors and the expectations and even communicating with them because sometimes they may understand something different and you're like, no, this is how I actually wanted it. Um,
Yeah.
and then the other thing is I was pretty much going in with just a lot of experience from other people as well. So
Hmm.
I connected with a lot of people in real
Okay.
estate who had done flipping before, and I had gotten tips from them as well. So I think that's really important if you're gonna do something like that. And if you feel intimidated, either do it with somebody else, watch them and shadow them how they do their flips, or do a smaller project where it's more cosmetic and less of the ticket items are
Hmm.
affected.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point that because that was going to be my next question. Did you do this by yourself or did you get someone to guide you along the way? So it sounds like you did find one or a group of people that you were able to lean on and give you some pointers. That's one of the things I would like to do, a flip, but it's a little intimidating to me at the moment. Because of all those things, because it would be a house for sure, so I'm, like, worried about the big ticket items, like, cosmetic stuff is okay, whatever, roof and all that, or worst case scenario, like, you open the drywall and there's, like, rotting or termites, things like that, so
Right.
I think Imma wait until I have a little bit more experience and a little bit more risk tolerance. So right now I'm just sticking to multifamily properties, which has its own unique things as well, especially in the market that I am in, but lots of lessons learned that I'm learning along the way. And I want to go a little bit back to your first property of the lessons that you learned from that one. Since we talked about the lessons you learned with your flip, what kind of lessons did you learn with your first property?
I think really working my numbers would have been better. And I
Hmm.
really recommend when you analyze a property to really focus on the numbers. And I think I would have preferred to have more cash reserves because when you get into a property, you think about, oh, I just need money for a down payment and closing costs, and that's
Hmm.
it. But when you go in and you realize that there's things that end up breaking or need maintenance and stuff, it can cost you a lot. And so
Yeah.
with the first property, I really struggled for a couple years because even though the mortgage was paid off, a lot of the repairs were just coming in because that was something really big. If you see a property that has a lot of old mechanicals, like the
Hmm.
water heater is ready to give out along with the HVAC and the AC, you do want to ask for some type of seller credits or
Hmm.
uh, negotiate the price because for me, all of that died the first year. And
Yeah.
so I was like, "Oh, man, I don't even have enough to, like, cover all this,"
Hmm.
and it was just a lot, and I was working extra hours to try and keep up with this over
Yeah.
time. So, I think that's something big is really work your numbers and make sure that you have reserves when you get involved with a property, even if it's gonna be your primary.
Yeah. Yeah. That was one of my lessons learned too with these two properties that I have, because I did the same thing where the water heaters were a little bit like older, and I was like, you know what, I could probably squeeze by a little bit. And I did for a year or two. And then like last year, like two of them went out and I had to replace those. And then the furnace, and it's like, oh my God, definitely a hard lesson there. It's that I should have just fix them up front, and I did negotiate a lower sales price, but my fault was that I should have just did it up front, because then I wouldn't have to deal with it now, and then especially with tenants in there, like, that's the main thing is you don't wanna have, these tenants without, like, hot water or heat or AC or whatever, and so one of the lessons I learned, but I was lucky that because they're multifamily, one unit's paying off the other one and stuff like that. I lucked out on that I had that kind of buffer. But yeah, I agree. Definitely have a few more cash reserves than what you initially planned, especially with older properties. That's another lesson that I learned is like have a larger buffer and for maintenance and repairs than what you would if you got like a newer property. So yeah, I agree. And so with the condo, you did manage to get another property that you were able to actually do a kind of like creative financing or a unique way of acquiring a property. So I want to get into that. How did you get your, I guess this would be your third property at that
That would
point?
have been my 3rd. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
there were 2 happening at the same time, actually,
Okay.
the condo and then, a duplex, but
Okay.
with the condo, so, I was becoming friends with a neighbor,
Mm-hmm.
and she was renting out her condo, but she would come every so often, and so we chatted, and I had heard, like, what was her concerns, and she's like, "I wanna retire, and I don't wanna deal with this condo, and I need to move out of the state." So I don't know what kind of options I have. I'm not really ready to sell yet, but I want
Hmm.
to sell. So I proposed to her to do a lease option, which is where we go into a contract where I pay her portion and then I
Hmm.
get a tenant in her condo and I manage and handle everything in that condo.
Hmm.
So I was making money. And at the same time, she was also making money, but not having to worry about dealing with the tenants or dealing with any of the repairs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, we signed that contract for a year, um, and that was a really good way to try creative and see if that was something that I wanted to do because the
Hmm.
nice thing about the lease option is you can have a clause where it says, "Hey, after this time frame, I want to go ahead with the purchase of the property or I
Hmm.
don't want to anymore." So,
Yeah.
that's really good.
Oh, okay, nice. And so you had it for a year, and did she decide to sell or she ended up keeping?
She wanted to sell, but unfortunately, what happened with the condo building is
Mhm.
that they ended up losing financing.
Oh.
And so the reason why they lost financing was because they were not keeping up with repairs of the building. And so
Mhm.
that was a red flag. And it was really good for me
Mhm.
because I was like, wow, I'm not locked in for 30 years and here I am stuck with this thing and who knows if
Mhm.
the association is going to keep up with the repairs. So I
Yeah.
was able to walk away and I was comfortable walking away. So it was great because she also discovered a new way of doing creative financing when
Yeah.
she didn't know that this was even an option really.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to get some income, and it's a win-win. You make some money, you get the tenant there, and they don't have to deal with it, and it gives them time to decide on what they wanna do with that property. And so you were saying that building wasn't, doing the repairs and everything like that. Like, what happened to the other condo, your first condo? Well, I
So
guess
I was
your
running
condo.
into the same problem as
Yeah.
well
Yeah.
because while I was going through the lease option with her, I was also trying to sell my condo.
Mhm.
But luckily, the way that I sold my condo was I kinda did what do you call that? Like, for sale by owner?
Oh,
And
mhm,
so I was able to target people who had cash only.
mhm.
And so actually the person who bought my condo paid full cash. So we
Oh,
didn't have
nice.
to worry about the loans in that case.
Oh, okay. Nice. Yeah, you you did good on both of those and everything,
Yeah.
so that's nice, nice. And you were mentioning that you were having kind of like a second deal in between there of you that you bought a duplex.
Yep. So at the same time, I was looking at a different area. So I had already invested in suburban area, now was in urban, and I actually found an area in the rural Illinois area. And I was like, wow, I see a lot of cash flow potential here. There's a
Mhm,
lot of good price points and numbers are working really well. And so I decided to purchase a property in that little small town and I ended up getting a duplex, and it's such a great duplex, to be honest with you. I
mhm,
think I really like the multifamily, and with that one, I purchased it with, like, a commercial loan, so I had to do a 20% down for that one.
mhm. Okay, nice. And so what made you like, because one of the questions that, I often get is like how to decide the type of market, like what you kind of mentioned it a little bit. But what kind of like signs did you see in that rural area that made you think of, you know what, I think this might be a good area to start investing in?
I like to do analysis of the area. I know a
Hmm.
lot of people are like, "Oh, well, rural towns are dying and people are leaving and they don't wanna live there." But if you really look at the market and you focus on what's happening there, like the types of
Hmm.
jobs, there were a lot of factories there, a lot of manufacturing happening. They started opening up a lot of stores that are popular in, like, other areas,
Hmm.
like, they opened up a Marshalls, they opened up a Pet Supplies Plus, like, they were just getting a lot of new stores in, and
Yeah.
then we were seeing the demand for rentals, and the
Uh,
percentage of the market, it was like 40% of people were looking for rentals in the area,
hmm.
and so I was looking at all of that, and I was also looking at the price points. So a lot of the duplexes at that time were selling for about like $60,000
Mm.
and 20% down on something like that is not that substantial in the grand scheme of
Yeah.
things. So I was like, okay, looking at that and then looking at the numbers of, okay, I'm able to get about $500 a month in cash flow coming
Hmm.
in and different things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, so you were able to find a loan that was able to help you buy that property, which is nice because sometimes some of these like conventional loans that or these lenders, they're like, oh, I think mine, what did I ask him? I think he said like 80,000 was the lowest that he'd go for sales price. So it's nice that you were able to find somebody for 60K. I think you said it was 60K around there. So yeah, nice. That's a good
Yeah,
one.
and actually a tip for that because, you will run into that issue because I was running into
Mhm.
this issue, is you wanna go to the local community banks who are servicing those areas because they're most likely to give you loans for such low price points.
Oh, yeah. That's a good tip. Yeah, 'cause the local banks know the area and tend to help out their own community most often. So, yeah, that's a good tip. Imma try that next time if I spot something. And you're right, the rural areas, a lot of people are just like, "Nah, I don't wanna do that." But especially now with all the big cities where I'm going, it's San Antonio and Austin is full. So they're starting to creep full. There's a lot of rural areas where I bought. There's a lot of land being sold here and there. So I'm seeing that as well in the area that I am going to be moving to. So I've been keeping an eye on it and seeing what's going on. I see there's like roads are being fixed up and they just built like I thought it was gonna be a Bucky's, but it wasn't. I think it was a Valero, like a big giant one. And a lot of other things that they're building. I'm thinking maybe next year trying to get something there too after I already got all my other stuff done. But yeah, knock on rural areas, especially if they're close to like big giant cities, because people are moving out.
Exactly. Yeah, actually a lot of the renters, like when I had vacancies and stuff, a lot of renters were like coming from the city and they're
Hmm.
like, "Hey, we're just trying to move somewhere cheaper because it's expensive in the city and we work remote or we work
Hmm.
local. We'd rather work in this area." And the other thing is looking at towns that are the county seats and that they
Hmm.
tend to have a lot of the larger stores like a Walmart or a Home Depot or something like that.
Hmm.
Um, and if you find towns that have a golf course or some type of amenities like that, it usually says that there's people that do have money there, so take a look
Hmm.
at that as well.
Nice, nice. And for you, how are you finding these properties? So we know one was like your neighbor. Were you like on the main websites like Zillow and Realtor.com or whatever? Or like how are you finding your properties?
Yeah, so initially I started with just looking on Zillow, the
Hmm.
MLS, worked with a realtor, and then I changed that strategy a bit. So now my focus is more looking off market because you're able to get a little bit more of a discount when you're purchasing a property. So now it's just networking. And I
Yeah.
really push networking. I'm networking almost every single week in town and just showing up to business functions and just letting people know, hey, I'm interested in purchasing property
Yeah.
because a lot of people are retiring in this town. And so a lot of them want to move to Florida or somewhere warm.
Hmm.
And so if I can show up and be like, hey, I'm interested in purchasing, that puts me in their mind. So when they are ready to sell, they can go ahead and give me a call. So that's how I've been doing it now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point because yeah, like, you don't know who knows somebody that might be selling a property. Like with networking, I was able to find because I was having the hardest time to have a one-time close construction loan with my VA loan, and I couldn't find anybody. Nobody wanted to do it because they didn't know what it was or whatever. And through this group I'm in, I managed to find a lender that's going to be able to do it. And I was like, "Ah, man, you never know. It could be a lender, it could be somebody that's selling or know somebody that's selling. So those are a good ways to find some properties and people that can help you through something that you've never done before, like your flip. And so definitely don't forget about the networking portion. And there's events. I think now because the ads know they target me. So once you start doing like things like that, you'll start seeing the ads of local events. Like there's always some random real estate event, investing event, or something similar that's going on. And I get the ads for it. And sometimes I'll go if I'm able to. So definitely start going because some of them are free or
Yeah.
pretty
A
cheap.
lot of it.
Sometimes you think they're going to be like very expensive, but sometimes they're like discounted or they're just free. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's really important to do that because not only have I been able to get leads through that, but I've also
Mhm.
built private money. So that way I
Mhm.
don't have to necessarily go to a bank and get loans for my future properties that I want to acquire or build.
Mhm.
So that's really nice too, is building rapport with other people who want to invest, but they don't necessarily want to get into the tenants, toilets, or flipping business.
Mhm.
So they're willing to invest their money into your projects. And
Yeah.
if you're showing up and showing your projects to people, then they know what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah. And since you brought it up about private money lending, can you explain a little bit of how that works? And have you used one yet or are you planning to?
I actually am planning to. I just haven't found the right deal that I'm
Uh-huh.
looking for. So it has been tougher. But pretty much how it works is, let's say you want to purchase a property, so you need money for the acquisition, so the down payment, or maybe you need the money for the actual renovations of
Mhm.
property. Instead of going to a bank and having them have all these extra requirements and the FICO score and everything, you can go to a private money lender who will charge a certain interest rate and they can provide you the money, and then you just pay them back within a certain time frame. So what's nice about that is once you have that rapport with that person, they are more comfortable working with you and just lending more money on more projects. So right
Yeah.
now, I have one who he's helping me out with new builds in the area. So we're trying to figure that out. And he's willing to do private money lending for that. The other awesome thing is if they've already been involved in real estate before,
Mhm.
they also have the credibility to help you get more funding with the bank if they don't
Mhm.
necessarily have all the private money. So
Yeah.
for me, even though I have a good credit score, I haven't done multi-million dollar projects, but my
Mhm.
private investor has. So when we
Yeah.
go to the bank, we can talk and be like, "Hey, we want to do a $2 million project." And
Mhm.
so that also helps me as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point, and private money lenders are also good because a lot of these properties, especially if they're like really need a lot of rehab or anything like that, you're not really going to be able to like get a regular loans like VA loans and FHA loans and stuff like that. They have the property has to be livable and not like falling apart, which is not going to be your typical fix and flips unless it's just like mostly cosmetic. But if it has like big issues, you're not going to be able to get like one of some of those types of loans. So you're kind of left with private money lenders. So definitely that's something I would like to do, but I'm not there yet. So that's another option. Like you mentioned, if your FICO score or whatever is not there yet, that could be an option. But they are meant to be short term. So don't think that you're gonna have them like 5, 10 years and stuff like that. Depending, you might never know, but for the
Yeah, it
most
definitely
part, they're
depends
short.
on the project. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. And the other thing that I do want to point out too
Mhm.
is a lot of people have IRAs. And so there is a type of real estate IRA, self-directed IRA that you can use. So if you want to be a private money lender, which that's something that I'd like to do as well, is fund
Mhm.
other people's projects, you can actually put money into this IRA and you get to choose which projects you want to invest in. So
Mhm.
it's different than the REITs, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
Um, and whatever money that is made, it just goes back into your retirement fund tax free.
Mm. Mhm.
Now, the catch is these are for people who don't want to get their hands dirty and do the contracting work and all that kind of stuff. But it's nice because there is a penalty if you were to do something like that. So this is
Yeah.
strictly just lending on other people's projects. And then you just get the earnings, whether from
Right.
interest or from the sale or anything like that. But it's a
Yeah.
nice way for another retirement vehicle.
Nice. And for your properties, do you manage your own properties or do you have like a property manager?
Initially, I was managing myself, and then
Mhm.
I ended up getting a property manager, but because it's a rural town, you don't really have that many options for
Yeah.
property managers. So I just started building out my own team. So I have my VAs, I have my maintenance people, I've built a lot of training material, and really
Mhm.
I don't have to worry about answering the phone or dealing with the day-to-day type stuff because
Mhm.
everything kind of runs as a business, which I think is very important because you don't want to
Mhm.
be caught into, oh, now I have another job on top of
Yeah.
everything else I'm trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I tell people when they're like, "Ah, I want to manage it myself and everything like that." There's a lot that goes into it. So make sure you understand that. For me, I have property managers, one, because they're far away and I literally just don't have the time to even manage or find a team. So I'm like, you know what? So if for those that do want to manage it themselves, they have to think of all these things. And talked about having a team, you have a VA and a few other a person. What kind of other team members do you have? An attorney? What other team members do you have?
Yeah, so I have my CPA, I have a bookkeeper because the taxes that can be very messy sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely want to have that organized. And then yeah, I have an attorney, so whenever we need to do creative financing or anything like that, he is really knowledgeable in that, and that's really important when you're building out the contracts that you're sending to sellers. And
Mm-hmm.
then I have my maintenance crew, I have just a couple VAs, and really just a good phone system as well.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, it sounds like you got a good strategy right there. I think that's something I would like to do eventually and build a team out and everything. And like lots of plans for the future. So, what's next for you? What kind of plans do you have for your next investment?
Right now, I'm looking at a few properties to acquire, and then at the same time, discussing with the city to see if we can build on some lots because I was given about 5 free lots
Hmm.
where the city's just encouraging, "Hey, build more,
Yeah.
um, new housing." So, we're right now taking a look at that, looking at the soil, seeing how we
Hmm.
can build houses and, just make more affordable housing options, really.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good option that you were given these lots. Can you talk a little bit how you found these lots?
Yeah, so my duplex was next to an empty lot, and
Mhm.
I was wondering what was happening to it, and so I saw that the city owned it and owns, like, a bunch of them, and so I just reached out to the city, and I'm like, "Are you guys gonna do anything with this? Because you guys keep cutting the grass and nobody's paying
Mhm.
taxes. You guys have it." And so what they said was, "Oh, we'd like to sell it, but nobody wants them because pretty much everybody just wants to dump, like, trash and
Yeah.
RV stuff on them, and they're like, "We don't wanna just sell them to anybody. We wanna make sure that they're going to be taken care of or something's gonna develop on these lots." So I
Mhm.
told them that I'd be interested, and so I brought plans in and I showed them what my contractor's thinking about doing
Mhm.
and the projects. So they said that they wanted to offer me all the lots, for free,
Mhm.
and if I could come up with a plan and we could get this started, they would love that because that just provides more housing to the area, which
Yeah.
is a need. And over time, the city will be receiving taxes on those
Yeah.
lots. So they have other incentives as well on those lots. Not only would I get them for free, but they also are giving tax incentives where I don't have to pay taxes for a few
Mhm.
years. And then also, I don't have to pay sales tax on any of the building materials that I'll be using on those lots.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's a really great deal. Oh my God. I didn't even think of checking the city for these types of lots and giving me some ideas of how to do it. And so, like, when you approached them and you had to give plans, so that means you had to go look for a builder and give them a rough draft.
So what's nice is if you look on Etsy or there's like different types of websites where they
Mm-hmm.
are house plans that are already designed. So you
Mm-hmm.
can take those to the city because they show all the angles of the plans. And
Mm-hmm.
so I just took those to the city. And so if we need to modify them, we just have to put them in the software and we can make modifications, but the overall rough sketch of it was something that I just had to get on the internet and it fit my
Mm-hmm.
idea, so I just took that to the city.
Oh wow, nice. Nice. And that's good because now you already started this kind of relationship with the city. So now any other future things you want to do in that area, you're going to have probably an easier time because now you built that relationship. So that's freaking awesome.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important to build those relationships because you never know how other people can help.
Hmm.
Because when I went to the city, I'm like, hey, there's this well on the lot, and I need you guys to remove that because I can't build, and that's going to cost an extra 4 grand to remove. And they're
Hmm.
like, if you're going to do something with this lot, we don't mind us taking out the well. So
Yeah.
be very accommodating when you build that relationship with them.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, a lot of people think the city and it can be like some of them are mean or whatever, but I've had to deal with the city a few times because there was like this apartment complex behind one of my properties and like the trash just kept flowing. Every time the dumpster came to do it, like trash would fall and then I would get cited. And so like I talked to him and I was like, look, because it kept trying to, I would get this mail saying that it's gonna keep going up or whatever. I was like, look, man, I'm trying to fix it. I was like, but I'm trying to like figure out what do I need to do. Can you send me the pictures? Because I don't know what you're talking about. It just says like trash and that's it. And so they sent me the pictures. The guy was pretty nice and everything. And I was like, so I don't know, should I build a fence or what or whatever. But eventually it was just resolved. And I think the property manager just told the tenants to just be more aware and make sure that they're like watching that. And so I haven't gotten sighting after that. But yeah, that was like my one time of dealing with the city and they were pretty nice. So like very accommodating. I was like, look, I'm trying to like I don't want to have my tenants struggle or have to pay these fees because they're getting charged these fines as well. That's one of the things that people need to remember is just go out there and like you said, networking, even with the government, the city or whatever. You never know what you might end up with, like properties, like lots. So that's freaking awesome. And so I guess to end it, what would your tips be for those that are thinking about getting into real estate investing?
I think find the investing strategy that you really want to pursue. I think a lot of people start a certain way, like, oh, the conventional loans or house hacking, but you don't necessarily have to. Like, there's so many avenues of real estate. So, really find the one that really speaks to you and really research and do a lot of networking with other people who are in that type of real estate space and those
Mhm,
projects and get a better understanding because a lot of times when you learn from those people, you learn from their mistakes as well, and so it
mhm.
can save a lot of time and energy and stress,
Yeah,
when you jump into the project. But definitely, don't hold back. Really jump in and get into real estate investing, and I know everything's scary, but little by little, as you feel comfortable and really understanding, the stuff, eventually you're just gonna have to jump in and take action, and I think that's
yeah,
a very important part of it.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, important to take action because you could talk about it and think about it and research till your eyes freaking fall off. But if you don't ever do anything about it, then what's the point of all of that? But yeah, I'm inspired by your story. I have so many things to do now. I'm gonna go look up the website for the rural area that I'm in and start scoping out some lots and see if I get lucky too.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your story. And like again, I think it's important to see people like us and especially someone young and another woman doing it out here doing real estate investing. So that motivates me even more. But for those that want to follow you or reach out to you, where can they reach you?
Over on Instagram and Threads, it's the same tag, which is fab_millennial. So you can find me over there and I'm posting about real estate all the time.
Nice. Make sure you follow her because I'm definitely like tracking, especially with these lots. I'm excited to see what you do with this. I'll be like stalking you. Yeah, thank you. And that's it for this episode. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to like and share this episode so others can also find this podcast. Don't forget to follow me on all my social medias listed in the show notes below, where you can also find resources to help you in your financial journey. If you're interested in becoming a guest on the podcast, you can find that information in the show notes. Other than that, thank you so much for your support, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye.